Hello and welcome everyone. Here's Charles Emmanuel Cote, kinesiologist at the Cardiac Rehabilitation Center at the Hospital Richardson, here to lecture you guys today about hypertension and how to prevent it with lifestyle changes. All right, so we're going to say about solution, but let's talk a bit first about what is blood pressure. All right, so blood pressure represents the force of your blood pushing against the walls of your blood vessels. In some way, it also represents the force against which your heart has to push for every time it's tried to eject blood from its cavity. So the higher the pressure, the tougher the work on a daily basis for your heart to maintain circulation. So a normal process with aging is that arteries were meant to be elastic become a bit stiffer and less flexible over time as they get more experience, if you'd like, which tends to lead to higher blood pressure values as we age. All right, so it's going to impact everybody a bit differently, but it's normal as you get older to get higher blood pressure. What numbers are too high, or what's the risk related to hypertension? The main risks related to hypertension are related to heart disease and stroke, so cardiovascular complication. All right, so it is known we usually look at two numbers when we take blood pressure. There's the systolic number, which is the upper number, and the diastolic number, which is usually the lower one. All right, they both represent the highest and the lowest pressure in the vessel. The highest pressure is when your heart is ejecting blood and adding volume into circulation. And in between heartbeats, the pressure tends to go back to that diastolic number. So for heart disease and stroke, it is known that the risk related to blood pressure is minimal when you keep numbers below 120 and 80 millimeters for your blood pressure. The risk starts to increase slowly over this. So between 120 and 135 and 80 and 85, we start to see the risk increase. And over 135 and 85, the risk starts to increase more exponentially. All right. So if you have values that are high, you are at higher risk of developing cardiovascular disease, whether it be heart problems or stroke. If you are diabetic, it is a bad combo to have diabetes and hypertension. So that's why the values are a bit more severe, let's say, so a bit lower, because you have to be more careful about your blood pressure control when you're diabetic also. So even though hypertension is not necessarily a illness or a condition that you're going to feel ill or feel sick, it comes with its load of risk that we just spoke about. So, and controlling your blood pressure doesn't have such a subtle impact on your health state. So bringing increased or high values back to normal or minimal risk values can help you lower your stroke risk by 40%, your heart attack risk by 15%, heart failure risk by 50%, and it can lower your risk of premature death, of chronic kidney disease, and even of atrial fibrillation also. So a lot of problematics that can be avoided or reduced when you have your blood pressure under check. So how can we do some lifestyle changes to work against hypertension? We're going to cover a couple of things today. So we're going to talk a bit about nutrition. We're going to talk a bit about exercise, weight loss, limit alcohol consumption, stress management, and smoking cessation. All right. So first off, reducing salt or sodium intake. So salt is usually something pretty common that we see in controlling hypertension, one of the main culprit that we target, because having a lot of salt in your diet leads to water retention. Water retention leads to an increased blood volume in circulation. More blood in the vessel equals more pressure in the vessels. However, The good news with reducing salt is it has a better impact on your blood pressure when you're an older adult compared if you were a younger adult. So as a majority of our clientele here is more on the older side of things, you guys can benefit a lot from reducing your salt intake. And reducing your salt intake can lower your cardiovascular risk by up to 25 to 30%. So quite a solid impact on your cardiovascular risk, if you ask me. How can we reduce salt intake? All right. There is some Canadian guidelines suggesting to take intake less than 2,000 milligrams per day of sodium. So this represents about a tablespoonful of salt. However, the salt shaker is not usually the main culprit of sodium intake. All right, the biggest sources of sodium are generally the food that we don't prepare ourselves. So restaurant meals, fast food, anything you buy that's already processed or transformed, or any prepared meals, the chances are that if you bought your lasagna at the shop or at the grocery, it's got more salt into it than if you prepare it yourself. All right, so these are usually the 4 targets that we try to care for when you try to reduce our salt intake. You can check on your salt shaker, but as I said earlier, that's usually not the main culprit. You can also check food labels to see if a product contains a lot of salt or not. So you can go to the food label and check the sodium line. Generally speaking, the nutritionist or the dietitian prefer to look at percentages of daily values. We don't expect you to start adding up every milligram of sodium you eat during the day. But checking on the percentages here can tell you a bit about, is this a low salt value product or a high value salt product? All right, so generally speaking, daily percentages under 5% is considered low salt, and over 15% is considered high. Make sure you do check the serving size when you check on food labels, and it's also a good tool to compare similar products. So let's say you want to buy pastas and there's the different couple brands, you can check on the food label to compare if there's one that might have less salt than the other. Otherwise, the science has came up with a couple of different specific diet to help prevent hypertension. You're going to see here that we're not reinventing the wheel. There was a very specific diet, the DASH diet, which means dietary approach to stop hypertension, which was basically based around stuff that you probably already heard of. A diet high in vegetables, fruits, low-fat dairy products. Try to go for a whole grain, try to go for mostly poultry, fish, and nuts, and to keep sweets and sugar sweetened beverage on the low side, and same thing with red meat to keep it as low as possible. So as you can see, those recommendations or this specific diet is not that different than what's recommended from the Canadian Food Guide or the Mediterranean diet, which is another one that's well known in the health department. Generally speaking, addressing the issue or the salt in your diet is one of the most impactful way to manage your blood pressure. All right, so if you have only one lifestyle change to work on, maybe work on that one. It's the most impactful for blood pressure control. Also, if you're a big coffee drinker, reducing your caffeine intake by reducing the number of coffee to as minimal as possible can be suggested. But honestly, if you're not a big coffee drinker, you're probably not going to have a big impact going from 1 or 2 coffee to 0. It's more if you're up in the 5 or 6 per day and you reduce it, then you're going to get some impact. So quick look at the Canadian Food Guide. As you can see, half a plate of fruits and veggies. Try to favorize the poultry, fish, and plant-based proteins, and try to go for whole grain foods, and generally making water your drink of choice instead of soda or any other sweetened beverage. Let's move on to my favorite topic, of course, exercise. So regular exercise can lead to reduced blood pressure, and the impact of exercise can actually be similar to your doctor adding another medication to your profile. All right. So if you had to pick between another medication or exercise, which one do you prefer? Huh? You can see it a bit like that. So, and you don't have to do an Olympian training to get effect on your blood pressure. Exercise sessions as short as 10 minutes can give you 24 hours of lower pressure after your session is done. So 10-minute session can have a big impact on blood pressure. And the good thing with exercise is that the higher your initial values of blood pressure are, usually the greater the drop or the lowering after your exercise session. So there's not a pill that's going to adapt to your values. If you had high values, the only solution with medication is probably giving you higher dose or more meds. But with exercise actually adapts its effect a bit. And the higher the baseline value, the greater the impact. So exercise, pretty good tool. And if we mix exercise and nutrition, well, of course, there is something about weight related to hypertension. So it has been known that weight loss in overweight or obese individual can lead to a significant drop in blood pressure. But it's not actually the number on the scale that's important. It's a bit more the number on your waist circumference, because the fat accumulating in the gut area is the one that has the biggest impact on your metabolism. So whether it be on diabetes or blood pressure control, that fat in the belly is the worst one for your health. So it is a good way to lose some millimeter, but for it to be a significant impact, you might have to lose quite a bit of weight, all right? So it's about a 1 millimeter improvement for every pound of weight loss. So if you're looking to drop your blood pressure by 20 millimeters or something, we don't necessarily expect you to lose 20 pounds to get there, all right? So weight loss is still secondary to lifestyle changes, all right? You can have improvement in your blood pressure if you exercise and you eat better, even though your weight doesn't change. All right, so we focus a lot more on the two previous behavior than weight loss as a mean of regulating your blood pressure. But if it comes as a bonus, you're going to have an easier time controlling it if you're more toward a healthy weight. Next, we got limiting alcohol intake. So this is one for those who actually have an alcohol intake that's over the moderate recommendation. So if you're drinking more than what you can see here, so more than 3 consumption a day, or 15 a week per man for men, or more than 2 a day, or 10 a week for women, well, you might benefit from reducing below the numbers that are here, and it could have an impact on your blood pressure also. Next is stress management. So it is known that high stress or anxiety levels are associated with high blood pressure, especially if every little issue you encounter in your life sets you up into those stress or anxiety states. Well, you're most likely going to have high blood pressure on all of those instances. All right, so learning to better manage your stress is a good way to help lower and control your blood pressure. I'm going to do a bit of self-promotion here and let you know that exercise is also a good way to manage stress. So we can kill 2 birds, 1 stone, maybe with exercise here. And we have scientific proof that activities meant on kind of relaxing, learning how to relax, can have a significant impact on lowering your blood pressure. So activities like relaxation, deep breathing technique, meditation, Tai Chi or yoga, those kind of calm activities or physical activities that are still calm somewhat, or simply social activities, talking with friends or getting help, are all stuff that have been shown to reduce blood pressure. All right, so learning and having some ways to know how to manage your stress and to relax is usually linked up to better control. Know that we do have a psychologist in the program whose part of her role is to address the stress and anxiety in our patients. So she is there to help you out if you feel like you need some help. The first step is usually asking, all right? So, or talking about it. I move on to smoking cessation. So stop smoking is not necessarily going to give you lower blood pressure values, but we put it in there because smoking combined with high blood pressure is probably the worst combo for the health of your cardiovascular system. All right, so it is always recommended to stop smoking to reduce your cardiovascular risk. But you're not necessarily going to get lower blood pressure values. But know that generally speaking, your blood pressure is usually higher in the hour after smoking a cigarette, because a cigarette, nicotine is actually a stimulant. All right, so if you do smoke a bit less, usually you're going to be less affected by those higher values. And just generally health speaking, it's always good to stop smoking. All right. So let's take a look at kind of the take-home message for today. So we spoke about eating better, moving or exercising more, limiting alcohol intake to moderate levels, managing stress, stop smoking, and one that we could have had in there is taking your medication. All right. So lifestyle changes can be an effective way of lowering high blood pressure, especially if you're able to engage into more than one lifestyle change. The results are usually added up. You get better results if you do more changes. That seems logical, but hey, we can confirm to you that it is happening like this. So lifestyle, however, does not replace medication. All right. So sometimes, however, if you do engage in a couple of lifestyle changes, sometimes medication can become a bit too high. And it has happened in the past that some of our participants had to take off some of their blood pressure pill or reduce their dosage because they were treating the problem at its source with lifestyle changes. Remember, medication doesn't fix the problem, it patches the consequences. If you rely only on medication to control your blood pressure, or you're just waiting your next doctor's appointment to get more meds or to get a higher dosage because you're not solving the problem. But with lifestyle, you can. So sometimes major lifestyle changes can impact your medication, but you shouldn't replace your medication. Do have that discussion with your doctor. And if you start to feel that your blood pressure is becoming too low because of the changes, we can link you up to the proper physician, and it should be your own physician that should take a look at your meds and see if there's any adjustment to do. Finally, of course, if we ask you to keep your blood pressure in check, well, monitoring your blood pressure is usually the first step to do so. Knowing your values is the first step to controlling your values. All right, so monitoring your blood pressure regularly is something important. I'm going to let you on today with how to take a proper measure of blood pressure. So this here is a bit the kind of the long version or the official version on how to gather values. Let's say if you have a physician appointment in 2 weeks and you want to bring them values and you want to do a real logbook of your blood pressure, this is the way to do so. All right, so usually we have to sit for at least 5 minutes before measuring. So sitting for 5 minutes. You should wait at least 30 minutes after either exercise exposition or cold exposition. Wait at least an hour after drinking any type of stimulant, caffeine, or even cola. Wait 2 hours after a meal to measure your blood pressure. And if necessary, well, go to the toilet. If you're waiting to go to the toilet, you might have a higher blood pressure if you keep it in than if you're letting it go. All right. So if your doctors ask you to measure your blood pressure, to have like the official way to measure it, he will ask you to measure it for 7 days straight and to take 2 measures in the morning and 2 measures at night. So when you get up before taking your medication and before going to bed at night. And of course, the ideal is to usually write it down. And when you do make your blood pressure measure, you should be able to respect those five little instructions here. So we talk about sitting position, not talking during the measurement, and having a calm environment. But when you're sitting in the chair, your back should be supported. The arm and the cuff should be somewhat at heart level. So usually getting our arms supported by the table is a good way to go, or by the armrest. Keeping your legs uncrossed and keeping your feet flat on the floor is the way to go. Here's an example of what a logbook could look like. We've made this little logbook available on our website if you want to access it. So you see per 7 consecutive days, you could take and log 2 values in the morning, 2 values in the evening, and bring those values to your physician so he can assess if you're under control or not. So this is kind of the official way of doing so. If you want to simply keep your values in check and you don't have necessarily somebody to report to, it is a good practice to take a measure of your blood pressure maybe every once to 3 times, let's say, during the week, just to make sure that your values are still in check and that they're not aggravating or decompensating and getting higher and higher as you go. Because it's something normal with age to see our blood pressure go up, we have to be a bit more aware, and monitoring it once in a while is the way to do so. Don't wait for your doctor's appointment to measure it. If you have a machine at home, do measure it once in a while, and otherwise you always have the pharmacy where you can usually go and take your blood pressure there with their machine. All right, so that's about what I have wanted to see with you guys for today. You have a couple of references here. You will also get access to a memory aid or a cheat sheet about today's presentation if you go to our website. There's one related to today's capsule. If you have any questions regarding today's lecture, feel free to make them come our way, whether it's through email or asking us in person the next time you see us. It will be our pleasure to give you a bit more info about that and about what type of change you can apply in your life to control your blood pressure. And I think that's about it for this capsule. So I hope that you guys learn a little something, that you find a couple of changes in there that you might be able to apply to get your values under better control. And there are also lifestyle changes that if you want to apply them, even though you're not hypertensive or your values are in check, they're also healthy behaviors in general. So feel free to adopt them even if elevated blood pressure is not an issue for you. All right, so Charles is out, and I'm going to wish you a nice week, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.